Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. So a few quick introductions. My name's Adam Connolly. I'm representing IATDG, which is the International Association of Tour Directors and Guides, and also Group Tour Professionals. Really delighted to have two fantastic travel entrepreneurs with us today for our discussion around accessible travel. And we've just been having a quick chat, getting to know each other for the last 10 minutes. And I think it's going to be a really good conversation on a much-needed point of discussion, I think, in our industry. So first of all, Alvaro Silverstein, welcome. Thank you very much. So Alvaro is the founder and CEO of a company called Wheel the World. And we're also joined by Angus Drummond, who is the founder and CEO of Limitless Travel. So thank you very much for you two guys for joining us. The format for today will be, we'll just have an open conversation. I've got kind of a format to follow. Please use the chat function to put any questions in or any comments that you've got. And depending on how we get on with time towards the end of the hour, we'll open it up for questions. But just to start with, if I could ask Alvaro and Angus to kind of introduce themselves and give us their story. I thought about doing this myself, but then realized that actually these two gentlemen have got fantastic stories, and the stories are a million times better coming from those guys. So Alvaro, if we could start with you, that would be great. So please give us your story.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much, Adam, for this invitation. So yes, my name is Alvaro. I'm one of the founders of Wheel the World, and my story is that I have a disability since I'm 18 years old. I moved myself in a wheelchair, and I have always been passionate about traveling, about exploring places before having a disability, and also afterwards. And my dream was always, as I grew up, and I am originally from Chile, Santiago de Chile in Latin America. My dream was to visit a very famous national park in Patagonia called Torres del Paine. But I always thought that this was impossible given the lack of accessibility of this travel destination in the end of the world. But one day, my good friend Camilo, that today is my co-founder, he told me, okay, come on, let's figure out on how to visit this place. I know that he knew that I loved it, and we started figure out on how to organize a trip of 5 friends to get there, and we realized that nobody else did the trip before that we wanted to do. There was no information about accessibility of accommodations, no information about how we would move around. We needed a special hiking wheelchair that cost like $5,000 to buy it and ship it from France to move around the park that we wanted to explore. So we decided at that point to transform our trip into a project, the first ever wheelchair trip to complete the W trek in Patagonia, but with the ambition to allow then others to repeat that trip. So we would figure out on how to do it and then raise the information so other people could repeat it. So we did this trip. It was beautiful. It was amazing. And we generate a lot of content, audiovisual content about our trip that went viral, specifically in California because I was living there, and also in Latin America. And what happened there is that hundreds of people started reaching out saying, oh, how cool that trip to Patagonia of Alvaro. I want to do it also because I also have a disability, or I have a friend, a family member that I want to organize a trip for him or her. So we started organizing this trip to other people. We were not a company, we were not nothing, but we just wanted other people to repeat this trip. And that's when we started replicating what we did in Torres del Paine in other destinations in Latin America in specific. And we started, and we built a platform online so people could know about our offer and what we did. And forward to that, 3 years after, we have impacted around like 1,200 people traveling to places like Patagonia, Machu Picchu in Peru, Easter Island, Maui in Hawaii. Also more conventional travel like booking hotels and accommodations in New York and in Rio. And our purpose as a company is to make the world accessible and allow people with disabilities to travel places as anyone else.
Fantastic. Thanks, Alvaro. That's brilliant. So I'm sure I read somewhere that Instagram played a big part in building up your portfolio when you started, or your profile when you started. Is that right?
Yes, social media in general, like YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, because we developed a lot of content, beautiful content of Patagonia. That's how pretty much people started to know about us.
Okay, cool. That's really interesting. Well, thank you for that introduction. Angus, if you please tell us about yourself and your business.
Super, yeah, and thank you for that intro, Alvaro. It's great to hear your story. And Adam, thanks again for inviting me to do it. It's very nice to meet everybody on today's call. Hope what I sort of tell you will be of use to some of you. So my name is Angus, and I'm the CEO and founder of a company called Limitless Travel, and we specialize in organizing tours for people with disabilities, primarily in the UK and Europe, but also now further afield internationally. My story with Limitless Travel began sort of 8 years ago now when I was 23. I was diagnosed with a muscle wasting condition called muscular dystrophy. Up until that time, I had always been a very active person and had always enjoyed playing sport, and in particular had always loved to travel. Travel was my passion, travel was my hobby. Every time I worked, I saved up some money to be able to always go on a trip. And that was because I just loved to be able to go and visit new places in the world, to visit new people and to visit new experiences. Shortly after my diagnosis, for muscular dystrophy, I sort of took a bit of a turn for the worse, in the sense that I sort of really wasn't aware, or I didn't really understand how I could sort of face up to what the future would hold for me. And the prognosis for myself was over the next sort of 10 to 15 years, my mobility and muscles and strength would just keep declining until I was sort of confined to a wheelchair and had no strength in my body whatsoever. So as somebody in their 20s, that was a very difficult thing to take. And I just decided to do the thing that I loved most, and that was to travel. So I quit my job, packed my bags, and me and my girlfriend, who's now my wife, Lucy, we packed our bags and traveled around the world. And we had an absolutely fantastic time. We explored South America and Asia, India, everywhere that we could go to, because I sort of knew, that as I progressed, that I might not have the opportunity to do so. And travel for me was an incredible healing experience. It really helped me come to terms with my condition and what the future would have in store. But at the same time, I found it incredibly challenging, and I was, it was more mobile then than I am now, and it was still very difficult, and that's only got worse. So when I was away, I sort of wanted to do something about it, and I wanted to create a company that not just sort of enabled people to travel, but actively encouraged them and empowered them, because I knew that travel could be a means to actually help people overcome many of the challenges they face on a day-to-day basis. So hence, that's where the sort of concept for Limitless Travel was born. When I came back to England, it was, we wanted to, organize it in different ways and sort of, organize like a online booking platform for people to book hotels and trips. But then we actually found the best way to support people was to organize group tours, whereby we researched everything for them, we organized everything for them, supported them through the booking process, we supported them on the holiday. And that was 4 years ago now, and since then we've expanded to offer destinations now, like I said, across UK and Europe and internationally.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Angus. And of course, the breaking news is that as of 13 minutes ago, you've got an exclusive deal with Wheel the World from South America, haven't you?
Yeah.
which we just did in the pre-chat. So that's great news.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting because I think both Alvaro and I have very similar ethos and very similar, beliefs in travel, at least from what I've heard from Alvaro and seen on the website. But interestingly, sort of offer different product ranges and cater to different customer bases. So it'd be great to be able to partner up together and actually, combine the strengths that we have to help more people get away.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that it resonates here, Angus, is how for me too, like traveling was kind of a rehabilitation for me, right? At the end of the day, when you travel, you are out of your comfort zone. You have to deal with different things, but you're enjoying and you are like visiting these beautiful places, and you have to figure out on how to move around, how to transport through places, through ask help, right, to unknown individuals. So I totally resonate that travel is something that is beneficial for people who pass through like tragical situations, as Angus and I did. And I believe that if we can allow more people to have travel experiences, they will be happier persons, and it's something that we need all the travel industry, right, to be aware of, right? Not just Angus and me. So I'm very excited to see that there's so many people connected in this Zoom meeting.
Definitely. I mean, I always say that, you know, even if people don't have a disability and even just people need a holiday anyway, just to help escape the stresses of day-to-day life through work and through whatever that might be, but let alone when you sort of have a disability, and every day can be an incredible challenge. And for what I discovered was just how many people that we now take away on holiday that just haven't been on holiday for years and years and years, and on a day-to-day basis, you know, are stuck at home. I know that everybody over the past year has experienced lockdown and social isolation, but for many disabled people, that's the sort of norm forever. And, you know, it will be the norm once life gets back to normal for people. And we know that travel is one of the only means that many people have to overcome that. And, you know, I think as a travel industry, you know, the travel industry is normally very good at working together. But I think when it comes to disability travel, the more the organizations like Limitless and Will the World and all the individuals on here that cater to the travel and tourism industry can work together, the greater the support we're going to be able to provide to people.
Yeah. Well, listen, let's hope that we can get the messages out there, and let's hope actually over the next kind of remaining 45 minutes we can just kind of open people's minds and educate people a little bit on how we can better cater for those travelers. And that's probably what I want to start with, because you notice I might have stumbled there and I said those travelers. And I will hold my hand up and say that I've struggled over the years to find the right terminology, and I'm not going to hold back in my question here, but in the 20 years that I've been working in the industry, I've probably heard every term used by tour guides, tour operators, to travelers' faces, behind their backs, ranging from, you know, the absolute obscene and disgusting to kind of almost too PC and too colloquial to kind of make any sense. So what's the best word to describe people with limited mobilities? Is it people with limited mobilities? Is it disabled travelers? Is it people? Do we just, I mean, you know, what are you guys comfortable with? And when we're next out on tour as tour guides, you know, how can we have confidence not to stumble and tiptoe around the words that we use?
If I can give my opinion first. So first of all, I would say 80% of travelers that have some kind of disabilities will understand if we if we don't know how to call people with disabilities, being that said, disabled travelers with disabilities, people with a limited mobility, or other ways to talk about it. If we, but also I feel that my and Angus' job is also to educate, right? And the way that the UN decided on how people with disabilities should be called and should be considered is the way that I just said. People with disabilities, right. Traveler with disabilities. Always like putting like and they call it as the methodology people first, right? We are people first or anything. It appears that we have some kind of limited challenges that allow challenges us to be on same conditions as anyone else when barriers are faced environment that are in the environment. So that's why I believe that saying travelers with disabilities, people with disabilities, blind people, deaf people is the right way to do it. At the end of the day, we believe that I believe that disabilities are on the environment, not on people, right? If we eliminate the barriers on the environment, my limitations are not relevant anymore, right? So that's also something interesting to consider, that as much as we reduce barriers in the environment, disabilities end up being just a characteristic of someone.
Mm. Yeah, I think really you really echo that. I think that, you know, from the language that people use and people prefer to be called, you know, the phrase "people with a disability" is the best and you know the preferred way to talk about it. But I think ultimately it boils down to, like, you know, there can be a lot of talk back and forth around semantics, and it can be very easy to get caught up in semantics and actually then to sort of worry too much about what you're saying, and then actually because you're worrying so much, then you actually make it a problem through worrying. And often as long as you sort of going, you know, with something that, you know, disabled people with disability, limited mobility, as long as it's sort of meant in a positive way and in a good way, I think that's, you know, half the battle in the first place. And you know, you're never going to get it right all the time. Sometimes people might like certain things, sometimes people not. But I always think as long as you're saying it with the best intentions. Conversely, though, you know, one of the things that we never really wanted to use, we always wanted to focus on travel and focus, you know, almost remove the need to talk about disability from what we do, to actually just focus on the fact that, you know, people are people and that they want to go on holiday, and that if you're going on holiday as a disabled person, you have the same needs as if you want to go on holiday as a student or as a luxury holiday or as a, you know, a package holiday. So we try to avoid that. However, when we're sort of, which is without sort of coming on to one of the other questions I know you want to talk about, when we sort of advertise, the most common search word for these type of things is disabled holidays. And, you know, in itself, that doesn't make sense because a holiday can't be disabled, but that is what people mostly search for. And that's something that we have to sort of use. So it almost sort of contradicts with what we want to do, but ultimately is what people are looking for.
That's a very good point, actually, isn't it? Yeah, people using search terms that are not in line with with how you want to, you know, use the language in the first place. That's very interesting. It does lead nicely on to that point about about language that you use and in kind of communicating the stories and the products that you have. And I guess that reflects in the same way. Is there any? How have you found the best way to kind of create your copy and use language to sell the products to disabled travelers? Are they is it irrelevant? Is it all about the destination and the experience, or do you find you have to carefully craft words which put people, reassure people that they're going to be able to do have the experience?
I think for ourselves, and I'm not sure this may be different for us compared to Alvaro, just due to the nature of the actual the difference in the products and services that we have, and actually for many of our customers, that they're not really as focused on where to go to. They're not coming to us because they want to go to a specific destination. They're more coming to us because they want to go on holiday and they are unable to otherwise. And for many of our customers, you know, when they reach out to us, like I said, they haven't been on holiday for a number of years. So it's about really being able to build up that confidence, to give them that confidence that they can actually go on holiday for the first time. And they've had so many bad experiences in the past that they believe to themselves that they just can't go on holiday. So actually for us, a lot of the language that we use isn't about, you know, the fantastic things you can necessarily say on holiday. It's not about maybe like a normal travel company would have, whereby it's talking about the features in the hotel and the sea view and you know, some of those aspects. It's about the accessibility and the confidence and the support that we can provide for people. And so we sort of very much tailor our language to give reassurance and to give confidence and trust. And I think then once you've built up that confidence and trust, then you can start to build up the excitement about what it is that people will actually get to do and experience on a holiday.
Okay. And Alvaro, you've got some fantastic content in terms of videos, really inspiring, you know, video content that you guys have got on your YouTube channel and well, on all your kind of mediums, really. Would you say the same? Is it reassurance and confidence that people are looking for first, or are they wanting to dream first?
Absolutely. So why Limitless Travel and GoWillTheWorld.com travel exists is because conventional travel services and sites, right? They haven't been focused on detailing accessibility information of travel services. Customer service of conventional travel companies, they don't know about accessibility and accessibility needs, right? So our value proposition is that one. We know what are the needs of people with disabilities, which vary. That's an important thing to consider, right? Like I have a quadriplegia, right? Angus has a muscular dystrophy, and our needs might vary a lot, right, in terms of accessibility. So we need those. We understand those needs, and we can understand if those services that are out there can satisfy those needs, right? And that's the value proposition that we put together in the industry. And particularly what we've been focusing a lot is to raise that specific information about accessibility. So, for example, one of the things that we have figured out is ADA regulation, right, for hotels. They say like altitude of beds is different for the regulation, for example, of altitude of beds in hotels in Spain or in France. And at the end of the day, that's why, because accessibility needs vary, right? I might prefer like a lower bed, and someone who is a senior person would prefer like a higher bed. So what we've been focused a lot on raising this information in details about accessibility characteristics, so we can provide this information to our users and they can confidently understand what's good for them or not.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
So, and it's interesting you talk about the hotels there, and I guess a huge amount of your effort must go on choosing the suppliers and vetting the properties and vetting all aspects of the tour that you guys put together. Talk us through the basic process of designing a tour with your customers in mind.
I could jump in there. So for us, we sort of, it's quite an onerous research, process, and a lot of sort of our activity has to go into that sort of research time. And I think a lot of the value that, that customers get when booking with the likes of Limitless or Go Wheel the World is that sort of, that trust and that knowledge that the research has been done for you. For us, we sort of, it's about a sort of 3-stage research process, really, whereby we're sort of doing desktop research to find destinations and potential places that may be accessible. Then it's sort of primary research over the telephone, where you're calling people up and conducting audits over the phone. And then there's that research in person, where you actually think that a destination is viable and that we can be launched. And we would then go and visit that destination in person and conduct quite a thorough audit of that and all of the other facilities around there. So for us, that's the hotel, that's the transport, that's the itinerary, that's different activities, it's all the different facilities that there may be. And only at that point do we then sort of look to put that together as a destination that people may offer. Another aspect that's really important for us as well isn't just that the sort of facilities are right, it's that the people who are there at the hotel or at the destination also share our sort of values, because ultimately they will still be representing Limitless. And, you can have the most amazingly accessible hotel, but if the staff aren't willing to support disabled people or aren't willing to provide those services, then that can just ruin the whole experience completely. So we have to make sure that the people that work for the destination sort of are willing and able to support groups with our, of our type.
Okay, so that's quite a thorough process for every new destination, I assume, and that's really interesting, and it's a great point. And there's a question actually about that in the chat, which I'll come back to later. But it's about the staff knowing what they should and shouldn't do, and how best to serve the customers. That's really interesting. Alvaro, how about you guys? What's your kind of process for designing that experience in the first place?
Similar to Angus, research, a lot of research, partnering with specific partners, which is like, I don't know, like accommodations or in terms of tours, like tour operators that kind of, we see that they have the capabilities to serve, to have a level of service for our users' needs. And we, this year, because we couldn't visit much, right? And we wanted to continue expanding our offers to be better prepared towards reactivation. We developed an app to onboard new partners with questions and answers to evaluate their accessibility, that for hotels and that for tour operators. So we can understand better what's their level of services and what are the things that we can offer to our clients, right? Like we call it the accessibility mapping system. Is an internal app that we use specifically our team, or we send it to our partners so they can like raise this information, and also people that have traveled with us, we have like convert them into like will the world champions, so they could like use this app to raise this information for us, so we can like expand our inventory. And what we have done like this year too, accommodating to the new realities, is that we build like a Will the World Academy, we call it. Okay, and they're like on an online course that we are going to launch, I think, in one more week, with classes specifically to get a travel professional that is not familiar with accessibility needs, disabilities, accessibility, to understand how people with disabilities travel and how people can assist, provide support, people providing services to them so they can have like a pleasant travel experience. We have done these things to, of course, accommodate to the situation that we haven't been able to physically test the services that we normally offer, right? When we talk about Machu Picchu, Patagonia, that remotely doing the onboarding is impossible. You have to visit there because there are like more challenging destinations comparing, for example, London or I know Barcelona. There are like cities that are better accommodated. So for that specific destinations that I personally love to have on our inventory, we have to visit them and to kind of collaborate with local operators to accommodate their services and advise them on how to improve their accessibility.
Yeah, the app that you've developed sounds amazing, and probably on behalf of every tour operator, certainly in the UK, with the exception, and excluding Angus's tour operator, you should probably license that and sell it to them, because there's probably quite a few tour operators who could benefit from having that information pre-travel. The training course sounds really interesting as well. So we'll keep in touch after this, Alvaro, and if we can help you get the word out about that, then we'd be delighted to help on that front as well.
That will be
yeah, no problem whatsoever. Carry on.
Yeah, that would be amazing. And regarding the app, that's totally like we think we want to provide it for free. We want to like collect as much information as possible, understand what's accessible and what's not, to help the industry understand and digitalize this information that is difficult to find, right?
Yeah, perfect. So we've probably, well, I know we have got a lot of tour guides who are watching now, and there will be quite a few who watch the replay, if that's the right word. I think a common, and somebody's put a question in there, Declan's put a question in this actually, and I think a common theme for a lot of tour guides and tour leaders is that they might not necessarily work with exclusively companies like yourselves, okay, so who are entirely focused on providing experiences for disabled travelers. They will essentially work for escorted tour operators who might have 10, 20, 30 people in a group, and perhaps one of those customers will have needs that that are different to the rest of the group. What kind of tips can you give the tour guides listening to best deal with those customers? And I guess the first thing is to probably how can you make them feel as included as everybody else?
Mike, I can take this one as the first one. I believe that's one of the most challenging things in the travel industry. When you have like a group, of unknown people. One of them has a disability, and and kind of the group sometimes needs to accommodate. So I would say that to feel everyone comfortable, the person who has a disability, the other people, uh, is to that like kind of like tour leader to have the leadership to 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 understand how important is to provide accessibility and inclusion and feel everybody comfortable enjoying whatever is planned to be enjoyed, right? So my recommendation there would be to have like a good leadership communication during the tour, so everyone understands once what are the needs of each other, and try to enhance people to support each other and to have like a cool kind of community at those experiences, so people can get to know each other, understand their challenges, and get to help each other. At the end of the day, most of the times, people are more willing to help the one that is more challenged, rather than saying, "Oh, why I am in this tour, right, with people that I'm not used to be with whatsoever," right? So most of the time, people are traveling, are willing to have new experiences, met new people, be immersed in something that are not expected to. So that's something to take advantage of. So creating bonding through the groups.
Okay. Angus, have you anything to add on that?
Yeah, no, just I sort of, just to reiterate what Alvaro said, I think it is one of the hardest things in the travel industry to try and get right. It is, undoubtedly a challenge. I think it's also very difficult as a disabled person, someone with a disability, when you want to travel, and it can be quite a nerve-wracking thing. I mean, for me, it was, the experiences I encountered where people got this wrong was the inspiration that made me go and set up a company to try and get it right. So, and ultimately, I think when it was done wrong and when it was done badly, it's probably boils down primarily just down to poor communication, and the tour organizer or the group leader not being able to communicate properly with myself. And the resulting factor of that was that it made me feel sort of either nervous or worried or sort of excluded from the group. And I think that the best thing that an agent or an operator or a group leader can do is actually just take some time to speak to that person. If you see that somebody is disabled, don't try and pretend like they're not disabled, or that that person is living with that disability every day. They are fully aware that they are disabled themselves, and to them it's completely normal. So talking about their disability, whilst it may be unusual for somebody else, it isn't unusual for that disabled person. So I think, just a sort of a start of a trip, start of a group, just spend some time and just sit down with that person and just understand their needs and requirements and just how they can help them best. Is there anybody to help them in the group? Would they like anybody to help them? Is there anything they want to do? But then at the same time, just being careful not to try and make too much of a fuss. Sometimes when it was like, you go into a bus and it was like, suddenly everyone wait, no, Angus is coming on. You have to all wait for him to come on first. And everyone has to sort of stand back and watch you trying to get onto the bus. You're sort of made to feel a bit like a bit of a circus animal or something like that. So understand somebody's needs, take that time to communicate them with them, but then just make them feel included and part of the group as much as possible.
And you mentioned there that you've experienced people getting it wrong. What kind of classic mistakes do tour guides, tour leaders make, do you think, with disabled travelers?
Well, I think Alvaro sort of alluded to it earlier, that his disability, whilst we're both disabled, his disability will make his needs very different to mine. And the biggest thing you can do is assume that you know how to look after somebody and to assume when to help them. And I think the thing that is most frustrating as somebody with a disability is people sometimes trying to be helpful, but actually being completely the opposite. So they think, seeing that you're struggling, and for me, I'm able to walk, but I have very limited strength in my legs. So that if I'm doing something, I need to use my arms to push myself up, and that's where I get my strength from. But sometimes I can be, say, trying to get onto a bus using my arms, and then a group leader will come and grab me by the arm and try and help me in. Then suddenly I'm sort of floppy like a scarecrow. I just can't do anything, and then it just makes the matters worse. And that's a classic case where somebody hasn't just said, "Excuse me, Angus, is there anything I can do to help you? Just tell me if you need any support. I'm here on hand, and if you need me, just let me know." that would be incredibly helpful. And I would then direct that person to say, lift my leg up or to do something. But when somebody sees you and they assume they know how to help, that's what makes matters worse. So like I said, it just boils down to that communication. Just ask somebody how they are and if there's anything they can do to help. And if they say no, then just believe them.
That's fantastic advice. And I think the message I'm getting is don't be scared to ask and have that open conversation.
Yeah.
And not feel shy about it.
As I sort of said, for a tour agent who doesn't normally cater to disabled people, that disability will be new to you and you'll be something you're not used to dealing with. But for the person, they have it every day and they're completely used to it. So being asked questions about it and you're having to deal with it is nothing unusual. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to talk to the person. Don't be afraid to inquire. Like, I find it really reassuring when people ask me about my condition and how it affects me.
Yeah. Somebody's put in the comments, don't touch people without asking is a good rule of thumb in any situation. I totally agree. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Alvaro, have you had many experienced many kind of terrible mistakes that tour operators or tour guides have made when trying to accommodate disabled travelers?
Absolutely, and I don't have much to add on what Angus said, right? Like the key insight there is like it's totally fine to ask and to ask how can I help you, right? Do you need any help? I'm not familiar with what are your accessibility needs, so please let me know whatever you need, right? And yes, like a typical example is I'm a wheelchair user. It's like I am pretty independent to move myself in flat spaces, and I don't like people pushing me when I don't need it, right? And sometimes people are like always pushing you, and they think that you are comfortable going where they want to go, and that's a good example that I understand that he didn't know and he wanted to be like supportive, but for me it was better to be cool, be okay, be my own. If I do need any help, I to feel comfortable to ask it. Right?
Yep. So there's been a couple of comments and a couple of messages I've had through, just doing a quick scroll of the chat. And somebody's mentioned that there's obviously two types of disabilities. There's the physical, but there's also the mental disability as well. Do your companies set yourselves up and design tour experiences for people with mental challenges as well, or are you just focused on experiences for people with disabilities, physical disabilities?
We don't have much experience with we do have experience with people with cognitive disabilities, but that they also have a mobility challenge. Okay, so people, for example, with Asperger or disabilities that are kind of invisible. To be honest, we don't have experience yet. We've been focusing these 3 years to tackle the challenge of mobility. So I would say that we have the more general concepts on how to advise people on how to assist people with mental or cognitive disabilities, but we have more experience in the mobility side that also involves people with visual disabilities or hearing disabilities.
I would say our split is probably slightly different. And partly due to the sort of limitations of actually number of sort of wheelchair users, say, that you can take on a trip. We typically have groups of maybe 20 people, and there's about 8 wheelchair users on there, or maybe a couple of people with a physical, with a mobility impairment. So yeah, so about 50% of our customers have a non-mobility related disability. Sometimes similar to Alvaro, it's a combination of mobility and non-mobility disability. And actually we find that so it's the non-mobility disabilities are often more challenging to deal with, or can be the most challenging disabilities to deal with. And I think part of the reason is sort of, I just saw a comment there from Sherry saying that shouldn't tour operators be aware of the situation well before the tour begins? And that's something that we face as a problem on many occasions, in that I think when somebody has a physical disability, it's much more easier to describe their physical limitations and what support they need, because it's, you know, around their physical surrounding. But when somebody has more of a, you know, behavioral disability or a cognitive disability, until you actually meet that person, it's very, very difficult to get a clear understanding. And we have quite a detailed care questionnaire whereby a trained, a professional healthcare worker and carer will speak to our customers before going and try our hardest to understand as much as possible. But it's only until that person, you know, till we meet them face to face, that we fully understand what some of the challenges are that they face. And we have to just be prepared for that at all time, and to make sure that, you know, that is something that could happen, that we have the right provisions in place, you know, primarily through, you know, physical support and emotional support from our staff to be able to support that person.
Okay, brilliant. There's also been a few comments in the chat, and I was going to raise the question anyway. So a lot of the tour operators that the audience will represent will cater for you know, more senior travelers, and some of which don't believe yet that they have limited mobility. They still believe that they are, you know, as mobile as they were when they were much younger, and you know, I think that affects probably everybody. And you know, I certainly have a close elderly relative who you know, refuses to believe that he doesn't still go for a 5-mile run every morning. So how I'm assuming the right and the best and most empathetic way to deal with people like that, it's kind of the same, is not be afraid, ask some questions, and because you can't force anyone, you can't touch people when they don't want to be touched. I guess you have to make soft suggestions and be a little bit coercive. Or do you guys have a different view or different experience with that?
No, I think that sort of soft suggestions and that, you know, and is exactly the right approach. I mean, I could countless number of occasions where maybe we have somebody elderly calling up and they refuse to admit they're disabled, and they're like, you know, how disabled are these holidays? How many disabled people do you actually get? Are they missing limbs and stuff? And I'm like, well, okay, could you tell me a bit more about yourself? Are you disabled? Oh, no, I'm not disabled. Okay, well, what's the matter, sir? And it's like, I'm in a wheelchair. I can't see out of any of my eyes, but, you know, I'm not disabled. And it's, you know, there is this sort of stigma that some people don't want to admit that they have a disability. And for them, being around other disabled people and coming on one of our trips can be the first time that they've encountered disability. And it's, you know, it's something that they are reluctant to do. I mean, ultimately, by the end of the trip, they completely normalize the disability, and it's been a fantastic psychological process for them to go through. But, you know, where we, and sometimes we don't always get it right, and sometimes we've got it wrong. And sometimes, you know, that it's that time whereby maybe you just haven't really taken that time to just sit down and really understand where those person's nerves and where their challenges are. And sometimes people can come across as a little bit brash, they can come across as a bit defensive, but actually that's just them sort of, you know, worrying and sort of, you know, unable to accept their condition. And what we find the best thing to do is just to really take that time to sit with that person when they arrive, take them to one side, sit down and have a drink with them, and just really sort of talk to them and just talk them through and just explain to them about how the holiday would work, and just to make them feel a bit more at ease and just a bit more relaxed. And then started to get them to open up and to sort of feel, you know, more normal around this environment, and to make them realize that just because they're disabled and other people are disabled doesn't mean they can't still have a fantastic holiday.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. Alvaro, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes. So also to consider that most of our clients, and I would assume that Angus is the same, is that they are traveling with non-disabled people, right? With non-disabled companions. And that's also the case for senior people, right? 50% of the times, people who do the booking is not the person with a disability, it's the companion. And also there's an opportunity there to get support from that companion, right? Like in terms of how to ask help to that person to whatever it's needed to be there to have a better experience.
Okay, perfect. to talk a little bit about the future. I know that like every travel company, you guys have been hugely impacted over the last 12 months, and we were having a brief chat about this before, and actually I remember, Angus, when we spoke back in whenever it was, March, and I guess we were both trying to struggle and figure out our way through the mess that was March and April 2020, or whenever it started.
Well, Adam, as I said to you at the time, some of the advice you gave me probably helped to save the company, so I can't thank you enough for that.
No, not at all. Not at all. I'm pretty sure I'm not responsible for any of that. So I know it's been really tough, and like every travel company, bookings have completely dried up. Is there light at the tunnel for you guys specifically? But I'm thinking more about your clientele. Do you think they will be more eager to get out and travel and experience the world, or do you think that they will be a little bit more hesitant given the new world that we live in?
Well, I believe that let's start that there's a lot of uncertainty. So whatever I believe might change in 2 weeks, as it have happened pretty much all this year. But so who are the first people who are getting vaccinated in the world is people. It is the segment that we've been talking about, right? Like seniors, people with mobility needs that also are part of the population in risk. So it all depends on how vaccines are going to be to impact how tough how will improve the pandemic situation, right? But if vaccines are working, I assume that the people that will be vaccinated first are our populations. So I believe that will allow people to start having more experiences outside their places, firstly domestic, right? Before committing to a trip to cross the Atlantic or whatsoever, right? So I believe that starting July, we will see a growth again in terms of demand of people willing to travel again.
Okay, that's good. That's fantastic to hear. Angus.
Yeah, it's like similar to Alvaro. I think it depends what day, not even what week it is, what day of the week, maybe even what time of the day it is you ask me, given the continually fluctuating circumstances. So it's a tricky one. And people with a disability are just like anybody else. They want to get out, they want to travel, and they want to see the world. But unfortunately for us as operators that cater to that market, we are up against it regardless, because people have such a high level of nervousness and have so many challenges that we have to overcome anyway. And I think they were already sort of 2 steps behind non-disabled people anyway, because of that sort of the challenges they do face, and coronavirus just sort of pushed that back even further. Hopefully once the sort of world starts to open up again, that will build confidence and they will start seeing people want to go away. But a lot of the challenges that we have to overcome will still remain, and that's still something that long after coronavirus is over, that both Alvaro and I will still be sort of fighting for and campaigning for and working very, very hard to overcome. But on the flip side, there are also many people, I think, who've come to us and just said, look, I'm tired of this now, and I'm done. And actually, I've realized from being locked away in the past year that I want to make the most of my opportunities. And what we've actually seen, and we certainly saw this at the start of the year, was that people were booking, actually wanting to book like longer haul destinations and further afield, be it in 2022, not for this year, but people thinking, I actually want to spend my money and go further afield. I want to do something more adventurous, and I want to make the most of these opportunities when we can. So I think it will certainly have a positive impact in that sense, and encourage people to want to travel further afield when they're able to and open to.
To complement a little bit to Angus also, just for everyone to know, and I believe that all of you guys who are part of this industry are experiencing the same. So at Will the World, we are having the same number of visits per month as we did on February 2020, before coronavirus, right? the same number of signups, not the same number of bookings. That means that people, they see themselves traveling in the middle term. Not today, there still have some uncertainties, but they're like looking for things to do when things comes to a new normal, okay? And also something that I think that not everything has been really hard with this with this pandemic for people with disabilities. And I will expand not to something like not only travel, but I believe that a lot of opportunities has arisen for people with disabilities in general. So now we are more aware that spaces has to be better designed, so we can have more spaces between people. That we need to have to accommodate a big amount of people in a specific place with more spaces and that's in help of accessibility, right? Because accessibility comes as a good tool to have social distancing. The second thing is that all what happened with remote working, right? Many people with mobility challenges lost work job opportunities because they need to move from point A to point C in a city. And now that remote work is something much more relevant, people with disabilities are able to have more job opportunities, and that's more money and that's more possibilities to travel, right? So I believe that this year has been tough, but also has been in long term will be beneficial for our community.
Fantastic, thank you. Just a quick question I want to pick up on in the chat. Somebody's put, can you explain what your experiences is of working with people with disabilities and their caregivers? And I think you touched on it earlier, Angus, is that everyone feels like they need a break, and I guess caregivers are very similar in that respect. How do you design the perfect holiday for those people to cater for a disabled traveller and their caregiver?
Yeah, and that's a really, really good question to have asked, because we're always talking here about disabled travel and catering to people with a disability to make sure they can have a great holiday. But often they're traveling with a non-disabled partner, brother, sister, parent, family member, friend, caregiver, whoever it may be. So you want to make sure the holiday is inclusive for both of them and they can both have a great time. And I obviously from my experience of our holidays, and I can't necessarily speak for Alvaro's holidays, but at least the sort of perception I get of them from looking at the marketing material is that I think we both prioritize the quality of the travel first and foremost. Accessibility is obviously fundamental, but really we are travel companies, and it's about, we believe in delivering amazing holidays and amazing experiences, and we don't believe that just because you're disabled that should ever be compromised. And it makes our job even more harder to deliver it, but we never want to sacrifice that. And I want to get to a point whereby Limitless Travel's holidays are regarded as good, if not better, than any other travel company's holidays. In fact, they will be regarded as better because of that high level of service and support and understanding that we do as standard for individuals with a disability will also carry over to people without a disability. And ultimately, we want to get to a point whereby non-disabled people book our holidays because they know that when they travel with us, they're going to get the best level of support that they could get from any other travel company.
Fantastic. Thank you. I got a bit caught up in that. That was really inspirational, Angus. Now I can't remember my next question.
Apologies.
Oh, and of course I remember what. I think I remember what the question was. What is as a disabled traveller, to both of you, what's the best travel experience you've had? Or the best experience whilst traveling? And we've already heard about your first one, Alvaro, so it can't be the Patagonia trip.
Do you want to go first, Alvaro? Have you got one in mind?
Go first.
I think for me, my best was also my worst. It was a combination of factors, I think. I don't know. I think this is the best one. It's when I was traveling around South America, and I would love to do this now, knowing, with Alvaro's company existence, but unfortunately I did it before Go with the World was set up. But my dream was always to go to Machu Picchu. I've always been fascinated by South American culture and through the histories and the Incas in particular, and had always dreamed to go to Machu Picchu. And that was one of the first places on our destination list. And I did the research into there, and I had mobility, I was walking and stuff, and everyone said, you can't do the hike, it will be too hard for you. You just have to get the bus there. And when you get the bus there, it'll be fine. You're sort of at the top, and there you are in Machu Picchu. And I was like, okay, brilliant. So managed to get to sort of Aguas Caliente. And the next morning, got up very early in the morning after a couple of hours sleep to get the bus to the top of Machu Picchu, or so it was, the top. And I got there with 2 walking sticks. And first and foremost, the person at the gate said I wasn't able to bring my walking sticks in with me. And I had about a half an hour battle trying to prove to him that I was disabled, almost to the point that I nearly jumped on the floor and showed him how I had to get up. And I got there and sort of walked along this pathway thinking that we were going to be at the top. And there I got there and saw to my left sort of these 250 giant stone steps that climbed up to the top. And I'm a tall guy, I'm about 6'6", and some of these steps were almost half of my height. So, all of our early start to get there, to see the sun come up and the mist clearing, to beat all the tourists, was completely futile, because it took us probably about 6 hours to climb up those stone steps. And we only had to laugh about it halfway up. We were being pushed, climbing up, and my wife was pushing me, and we're managing to get there. And it was coming. At the end of the day, we got there, and it was magnificent. And all of that hard work didn't take one breath of magnificence away from Machu Picchu and how stunning it was. And it was, sort of whilst climbing up those steps, it really made me realize that I needed to do something about this, because had I been able to prepare, and had I been able to look into it a bit more detail, I would have been able to make that much easier for myself. And it was seeing that lack of information that made an experience that, was still my most amazing travel experience. It potentially ruined it and prevented me from ever being able to do that. So, for me, Machu Picchu is still one of the most breathtaking places I've ever visited on this planet. But at the same time, it was one of the most challenging places for me.
Fantastic. Okay, Alvaro, what's the best experience you've had while traveling?
Well, so I would go for one of my first international experiences after my accident. That was, I went with one of my two best friends to Australia. And we were in the Coral Barrier Reef, and we went on a boat tour that was also with scuba diving. And I said, okay, it's impossible that I will be able to do scuba diving. I don't know if I would be able to do it. And it happened very by coincidence that the scuba diving instructor for that tour, his brother also had a similar disability as me. So he took him many times scuba diving before. So that kind of gave me the confidence. And also he was very excited to take me scuba diving with him. And it was my first time scuba diving after, it was 3 years after my accident. And it was kind of a beautiful experience of kind of feeling alive again, pretty much. I saw sharks. I had a great experience. And actually today at Will the World, we offer scuba diving in 4 of our destinations. And it's kind of one of my favorite activities to do if I go to a place that it's in the ocean. So that would say that it was part of my favorite travel experience that I have had.
That's brilliant, Alvaro. Thank you for sharing that. What a cool experience, and also really coincidental, like you said, that just so happened that the instructor had a brother who had a similar disability. And it makes me wonder kind of, what would have happened if you had a different instructor who hadn't had that experience, which kind of leads me on to the question and a point really about, because we need to finish in a minute really. And a few people have mentioned it. There's so much to learn. And I think there's a big appetite, I think, for more education around this topic, and perhaps more training. And the training portal that you mentioned is really interesting. Is there anywhere that any tour guides, tour operators can go to at the moment to get more awareness or more practical kind of training on how to deliver those experiences, how to design, sell, and deliver those experiences?
There's tons of content online. I'm pretty sure that Limitless Travel has tons of content. Also at Will the World, we have a lot of content of like travelers experience, good and bad, accessibility features. In our YouTube content, you can see actually how we have provided experiences for people surfing, scuba diving, hiking, you name it. So there's a lot of content online, and please reach out to us because we are going to we're going to launch our academy very soon.
Brilliant. Okay. And Angus, is there anywhere that you know of that people can go to for more resources and education?
I think similar to what Alvaro said, online and sort of doing that desktop research. But in reality, I do believe it's not where it should be, and the resources aren't there. And it's wonderful to hear that you're setting up this sort of academy and training program. I think that's an amazing service, and I hope that a lot of the guides and people here will take part in that, because I think it'd be a fantastic thing. But look, I mean, ultimately, I think in many walks of life, disability is one of the aspects that's still left behind, and there's so much progress being made in so many areas. And yes, there is progress being made in disability, but I think it's still stuck in the past in a number of ways. And in the UK, we talk about being one of the most progressive countries for disability in the world, and I think that's ridiculous. I think there's a huge amount of inequality for disabled people. So I would like to say that there's like a holy grail out there. I think it's just going to be down to people to putting in the hard work, and I think it's people on this call. The fact that you are taking part in this is amazing. It's great to see so many people interested in disabled travel. It's great to see so many of you asking questions. I know I'd be delighted at any time to help anybody with any questions they may have and support them, as I'm sure that Alvaro or anybody else that works in disability travel would be. For us, this is not necessarily a job, it's a vocation, it's our way of life. We live and breathe this every day through our work and through our living, so would be more than willing to help anybody at any point.
That's fantastic, Angus. Thank you so much. And I know a few people have asked about the contact details. I'm going to share the recording of this, and I'm also going to share, if it's okay with you, Angus and Alvaro, your contact details for the company, and people can get in touch and ask for support. I think this has been fantastic. It's certainly one of my favorite sessions that we've done. Really, really interesting. You guys are just so inspirational. Thank you so much for your time. You both have, so the International Association of Tour Directors and Guides, we have recently announced our conference in November, which is in Atlanta, 10 through 14 of November this year, which we're confident is going to go ahead. Open invitation for you two guys if you want to turn up and be a part of it and educate some more people. That'd be amazing. So we'll be releasing more details in the coming week or so about that. But yeah, you guys are welcome to talk to us anytime. That's fantastic. So thank you. Really appreciate that, guys. Thank you so much for your time, and everyone else. Really thank you for attending. Thank you for registering. I'll send out a copy of the recording when I've put it up online, and the contact details, and I'll send it out to everybody that registered, and keep an eye out on our various Facebook groups and stuff for more sessions like this. And appreciate it, guys. Angus, thank you. Alvaro, thank you, and good luck for the future, guys.
Thank you very much.
I really enjoyed this session. So happy to have been part of it, and very nice to meet you, Angus, and Adam.
You too.
Yeah,
Alvaro.
likewise.
Great to see you in the flesh, Adam, and just best of luck to everybody who works, everybody on this call. I know we all work in the travel and tourism. I'm hoping that the light is at the end of the tunnel. A few more months' time, and we'll be getting back to what we all love doing most. So fingers crossed to see you all soon somewhere, and if not, see you in Atlanta in November. Always wanted to go, so this is the perfect excuse.
Amazing, brilliant.
We'll make it.
Yeah, I'll see you there.
Brilliant. I'm making a mental note now to go and check that the hotel's fully accessible.
Yeah, the irony of it. The conference stage will be up 4 steps.
Brilliant. All right. Cheers, guys. Fantastic. Thank you very much, everyone.